Hello, this is the next instalment in John Masefield's The Box of Delights. We're now on to chapter 9. Kay went back to his room, sorely perplexed. It was time for bed, but the sight of Peter's bed, without Peter, reminded him that the wolves were running. He could not think of sleeping. Oh, if only I could find out where Cole Hawlings is, he thought. Then I would give him back his box and put an end to all this kidnapping. He stayed looking at the fire without any thought of undressing. At last, in his misery, he opened the box, thinking, perhaps I may see Hearn, the hunter. He might be able to give me some advice. When he opened the box, it seemed to him that he passed through a stone gateway to the waters of a lake, where a boatman sat in a little green boat. Kay stepped into the boat. The boatman thrust her off and rowed her over the lake, which was so clear that Kay could see the golden and scarlet fishes on the pebbles at the bottom. Kay landed on the other side of the lake and walked up an avenue of fruit trees at the end of which was a castle. Out of the castle to meet him came the lady of the oak tree. Still wearing the ring with the long ways cross, she seemed to be about 20 now, and more beautiful, Kay thought, than even Caroline Louisa. Ah, Kay, she said, I know why you've come to me today. You will hear more tomorrow if you go to Chester Hills. Now that you are here, what of all the things would you like to see? Well, of all things, he said, a tournament. At once he was looking into the courtyard of the castle, which was now divided into two by a gaily painted barrier. The sides of the yard were lined with tiers of seats, full of people and gay with banners. At each end of the lists 2 knights, one in scarlet, one in white armour, were taking positions on horses excited by the music and the crowd. Suddenly the trumpeters in the royal box blew all together. The knights dropped their lances to the rests, drove in their spurs and hurtled at each other on different sides of the barrier. Under the royal box they struck each other's shields with their spears. They themselves reeled in their saddles but were not unseated. The spears broke at the guards and leaped a dozen feet into the air. The knights finished their courses, then wheeled round and waited for fresh spears. Would you like to do that, Kay? The lady asked. Oh, I would, he said. A squire led forth a war horse with blue and white trappings, and out of the wall the pieces of a suit of armour walked towards him and buckled themselves about him. First the footgear, leggings and cuirasses, then the body armour and arm pieces, lastly the helmet with its plume. A squire came forward to give him a leg up into the saddle, and another brought him a lance. It is not always wise to take part in the past, Kay, the lady said. Arnold of Tody did so, as you may hear tomorrow. And where in the past is he now? He is lost, Kay. But Kay could not think of Arnold of Tody. He was on a great horse, feeling its mouth, and staring through the slit of his helmet at his enemy at the other end. His enemy was a red knight, just gathering his shield, which he now turned to Kay, so that he saw upon it a black wolf rampant. A squire handed him a white shield with blue chevrons on it, but before he could take it, the trumpets blew. At once he drove forward at the wolf knight. The horses whinnied. The joy of the charge surged up in him, and he saw the red helm crouched above the wolf. Then crash they met. I've got him! Kay shouted, as he felt his spear drive home onto the red knight's chest, and the knight go backward over the crupper. He had got him, but something odd had happened to himself. My girths are gone, he cried. He felt the saddle turn under the horse's belly while he was flung headlong, endlong, any-long, down, 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 back into his room at Seekings. Next morning, as soon as ever it was light, he dressed. Taking the box, he turned the knob first so that he might become tiny, next so that he might go swiftly, and instantly he was whirled up through the chimney, out through the cow, and away, just as it was growing light. He felt so minute that he trembled lest a sparrow should peck him in mistake for a caterpillar. In a moment he was whirled down to the doorstep of the great house at Chester Hills, still clutching the box. He was shrunken to the size of one of his leaden soldiers. The front door was opened and he was on the top step. He walked towards the hall. There came the pad of straw-soled slippers on the stone corridor, and Kay could see the end of a dark green apron, also the head of a broom which the old man was trailing after him. The broom began its work under the window seat. In one instant it was rushing at Kay with a row of bristling hairs, like a small plantation, which swept him off his feet. Kay was rolled over and over into the open hall, with his eyes tight shut for fear of being blinded and clutching the box of delights lest he should lose it. He picked himself up and contrived to press the knob on the box, saying, "I want to go fast to the chief room in this place." Instantly he was plucked through the wall, along a corridor, into a room where he was set down on a shelf of books, 6 feet from the floor. He heard the bell of the house chime for 8:30. Then a pleasant silky voice came towards him from along the passage, singing a popular song. "That's Abner Brown," Kay muttered, "and he wouldn't sing unless he were doing something pretty bad." Kay slipped in between 2 of the English poets as Abner entered the room. "What news? What news?" Abner muttered. He pressed the button of a bell and sat at his desk. Presently someone entered. "Did you please to ring, oh father?" the newcomer asked. "Yes, 19, Abner said. "I did ring. Send 7 here, will you please?" Presently a robust voice was heard approaching from the back of the house. It was singing a song which was certainly not the song for a young clergyman. "A rum, rum, tiddly, yum, who'll have a drink with me?" The door was shoved open and a man came striding in. He was the big man called Joe whom Kay had seen at the Rupert's Arms. He was laughing and singing in a breath. "You want me, chief?" he said. "You might close the door, perhaps," Abner said. "Gently." The man, from where he stood, made a long leg and kicked at the door too. Then he drew near to Abner's desk and stood there waiting. "I hear you've permitted yourself some little criticisms of my orders about these clergymen," Abner said. Kay saw at once that Joe was asking himself, who on earth could have told him that? "Odd how the news gets about here, isn't it?" Abner said. "You're right," Joe said. "So you have been criticising my orders. Why?" "If I knew why the orders were given," said Joe, "I might see sense in them. But to kidnap a lot of clergymen who can't afford any ransom worth your while seems to me a lot of foolishness. You've roused the press, you've roused the yard, and you've roused the nation. All to get a box, you say, that belongs to the Punch and Judy man." "Correct," Abner said. "That was in the possession of the Punch and Judy man. Would be better, perhaps." "That's why we criticise," Joe said. "You know that this old man, Cole Hawlins, had the box when he went to Seaton's house and hadn't got it next morning. Well, you've got him, haven't you?" What we can't understand is why you don't make him tell you where he put it.
How would you make him?
Abner asked. He's an old man. Bit of a talking to would make him tell. No need to hurt him. Threaten him with a red-hot poker, or keep him awake with itchy powder. If he'd scratched all these last 2 nights, he'd have told you by this time.
Then you don't realise who Cole Hawlings is. Did you ever hear of Ramon Lully?
You mean the chap who did the box trick at the Colosseum? Joe asked.
No, Joe. Not the Colosseum,
Abner said.
The man I mean was a philosopher of the Middle Ages, whose tomb they show at Parma. Remember the name, for I shall allude to it later. Did you ever hear of Arnold of Toldy?
No, can't say I ever did, Joe said. What was he, or is he?
He too was a philosopher of the Middle Ages, said Abner, and not really very much is known about him. But the son of one of his disciples left some papers which say that he and Lully were rivals. Lully was all for finding an elixir of life that would make him last through the future. Arnold was always trying to find some power of entering the past.
Golly, Joe said. They were a couple of queer cough drops, if you ask me.
I'm not asking you,
Abner said.
I'm telling you. This unknown man whom I mention says in his papers that Arnold, by some extraordinary magic power, created a box, by means of which he could enter the past at will.
In fact, he did the box trick, said Joe, like that chap at the Colosseum.
Now, Abner said, some think that Arnold entered the past by means of this box and could not get out of it, but is wandering there forever. Anyhow, he disappeared, but the box, the man says, remained and came at last into the hands of a lady who was afraid of it. She kept it in Stilborough Castle, about 20 miles from here, and when Stilborough was besieged in the Civil War, she buried the box in the castle vaults. This woman, Aurelia Stilborough, when she was old, repented of her folly. She wrote down the bearings of the hiding place in cipher. But perhaps, my dear Joe, I worry you with this. I should be desolated to inflict boredom on an old friend.
Go ahead, Joe said. Now we've begun, I may as well know it all.
Well, we came here, Abner said. I have always been interested in magic, as you know. For many years I have been aware of all the stories about Arnold of Toldy, but like most students of magic, I believe that the box must have fallen into the hands of the Inquisitors or Puritans and been burned. I have always been interested in ciphers of different kinds, and quite by accident came upon this Stilborough one cipher whilst I was stopping with the bishop at the time of the missionary conference. Well, a cipher will always yield its secrets if you go on long enough, and this one gave way to me, although it was a very ingenious thing. You're not an imaginative man, Joe. But you can imagine my excitement at finding that this amazing treasure of one of the amazing men of all time was buried in the earth less than 20 miles from here.
So, then, I suppose you got busy, Joe said.
Oh, busy, eh? Abner said. You little know what I went through. I learned what the cipher contained at 2 in the morning here. Before 3 I was on the site of Stilborough Castle. Pitch dark night, gale blowing, rain coming down in torrents, ivy blowing loose from the wall, bits of boughs flying everywhere. The castle in such a mess of old broken stones and earth and bramble that I almost broke my neck 6 times. And then, Joe, I made my measurements. I was wet through, cold to the marrow, but I didn't mind wet. I didn't mind cold. And there, by the first rays of light, I saw that I was too late. Someone had read the cipher a little before me. There were the brambles cut away, and the shaft sunk in exactly the right place. And at the bottom of the pit the marks showed that I was too late.
Gee, Joe said, with feeling. Been often you're too late.
Well, there it was. The box had gone, but it hadn't been gone long, and the next question was to get it from the man who had it. Who had it? Who had been digging at Stilborough and making inquiries there? The only man who had been near the ruins was a little old man who played a Punch and Judy show.
Cole Hawkins, Joe said. Well, you got him all right. You got no cause to complain. I suppose it wasn't hard to run him down, an old man with a Punch and Judy show.
By certain magical ways, I was able to find out who Cole Hawlings really is. When you see your friends again, you will be able to tell them why. I have never hurt him. Cole Hawlings is Ramon Lully.
Kay saw Joe gasp and then assume a look of pity, contempt and tolerance for a man plainly gone mad. But you said he was dead, Chief, Joe said at last.
I said they show his tomb at Parma. He discovered the elixir of life and flew away from his disciples in the likeness of a golden cock, and here he is now as Cole Hawlings.
That thing you say he discovered, the liquor of life and that, would be a kind of cough mixture?
If you can imagine a cough mixture that will make a man eternal, able to survive pestilence or any other way of death.
It will be a good mixture to get on the market, I can see, Joe said. These patent medicines just rake in the money. And should we all be in it with you?
My dear Joe, Adam said, if there is one thing I pride myself on, it is my loyalty to my cause. For whom do I toil here? For whom do I think and worry and scheme but for the Brotherhood? We have lived through all these years of danger and adventure together. What could be a greater joy to me than to share our little takings and enter into partnership for the marketing of an elixir for an eternity of happy quiet?
About these clergymen, Joe said, what we still don't see is why you keep scrobbling the clergymen. See here now in the Daily Thriller. The latest outrage at Chichester points to the existence of an organised conspiracy possibly, as has been suggested, to prevent the holding of the millennial Christmas service, advertised for the early hours of Christmas morning. We should warn the scoundrels responsible that the establishment will continue to defeat their machinations. The service will be held. You see that, Chief? And the heading, Church defies bandits. They mean business.
So do I, Joe,
Abner said. Is it your game to stop that service? Joe asked.
I'll stop that service if they don't deliver the box or tell me where it is.
Kay saw looks of anger, bewilderment, contempt, and mutiny cross Joe's face in quick succession. He noticed too that none of these looks was missed by Abner, who was watching Joe intently. Joe rose from his chair and walked the room for a moment. Chief, Joe said, I don't like what you're doing. While you were just a fair and square burglar like the rest of us, I respected you. But this dabbling in magic and scrobbling up the clergy will come to no good. You'll find it so when it's too late. The press respects burglars like us, who only burgle the very rich. But you're going now against children, women, and the clergy, and you've turned the press dead against you. Of course I've got no intellect. Don't go by what I say.
Come to the point. What is it?
Abner asked. Well, Chief, Joe said, now will be the time to stop this clergy business. The Archbishop is offering a reward of £1,000 for the return of the Bishop or Dean, with reduced sums for the rest. It's 25 quid even for a choir boy. It will be quite a profitable little haul if you chose to take it tomorrow or even today. You'll have the yard poking about.
The yard. The yard could be in this room, and those clergy could shout, "Oh, come, all ye faithful," at the tops of their voices and not be heard. Come to breakfast.
All right, Joe said. But there's another thing. There's a boy at Seaton's, Kay Harker. He was there with that boy Peter who we scrubbled. And I don't see why Cole Allins shouldn't have given the box to him, if it comes to that.
You don't see a good many things, Abner said.
I dare say I'm as blind as a bat, Joe said. And as for intellect, I never claimed any. But blind and balmy as I am, I never taught such tosh as you taught since I came in this room. Nor I never sold my soul to the devil. You got bats in your belfry. I thought so before, and now I know it. You'll come to a bad end, let me tell you, and it won't be long hence. Kay saw Abner's face turn a little whiter. He was plainly very angry and about to answer savagely when the door opened and in came Sylvia Daisy Pouncer Brown, who had no doubt been listening at the keyhole. On seeing her, Joe muttered what sounded like, "Crikey, now here's his missus." Sylvia D.P. Brown looked at Joe and drew her own conclusions. "Abner, my dear," she said, "you've talked and talked. Do come to breakfast before it's all cold. Remember you got to speak at Christmas talk at Tatchester Arms houses at 10:30.
I was forgetting the arms houses, Abner said. Those poor deserving old men and women. We mustn't forget them, must we? Well, Joe, that will delay our business till 2:30 in my room. Do you get that?
2:30 in your room. Very well, Chief, said Joe. They walked out of the room together. I'll come back at 2:30, thought Kay. and hear what those two are up to. He turned the knob of the box so that he might go swiftly. At once he was borne away on unseen wings back to his late breakfast at Seekings, with the three girls, each sure that Peter would be all right, and all thrilled at the disappearances of every single clergyman attached to the cathedral. "The gang has put the clergy's backs up now," Susan said. "You'll see what the Archbishop says. They are happy to state that 5 clergy from the diocese have proceeded to Tatchester to provide the Christmas services if by any unhappy occurrence the rightful ministers be unable to officiate." "They ought not to have mentioned that," Maria said. "Now the gang will throttle those too, you'll see." Kay did not answer this. He was thinking how very powerful the gang was and how miserable the beautiful Caroline Louisa must be, shut up in the rock with 2 women like she-wolves as guards. After breakfast he went round to the inspector. "If you please," Kay said, "would you like to win the Archbishop's reward of £1,000? If you would go to the Tatchester barracks and fall out the Tatchester Blues and raid the Chester Hills College, you'd find the clergy there. I'm sure you would." "Why, how about you run on about that college, Master Kay?" the inspector said. "This is what in medical circles is spoken of as an obsession. No, believe me, the college is full of young reverends. However, would young men like that go scrobbling the very men ordained them?" "Buy an aeroplane that can turn into a motor car and then back into an aeroplane, and it can hover just like a sparrowhawk and settle down through the roof." "Ah, no, Master Kay, no aeroplane can do that." "But I saw the aeroplane, I did." At this moment the car dashed up to the door. From inside it the Chief Constable of Tatchester called, "Are you there, Drew? Come along, will you? We need every man we can get. We're to give police protection to the clergy detailed for duty in the cathedral. Bring a truncheon, you may need it." The inspector unhooked a truncheon and hurried away in the car. "He simply will not believe me," Kay said, "and in a few hours it will be too late." He went back in deep distress to his room at Seekings. Ends the chapter.